No matter what happens during the week, we kind of know that, hey, when we get out there on the weekend, we can beat anybody.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Feed, powered by Xfinity. My name is Akinola, and on today's docket, we've got a recap of Week 2 of the May Melee, plus an interview with Fusion assistant coach Chris. Without further ado, let's hop right into the recap. First off was the Fusion up against the Spark in what was expected to be quite the match, as we start off with control on Li Jiang. Fusion on their last few percent to secure the first point as we enter overtime. Hotbot on Sigma with the Flux to send a few of the Spark airborne, leaving them absolutely helpless as the Fusion picks them off one by one, getting that first point on the map. As we move on to point number 2, a lot is going on to secure this point as all 12 members fight for leverage. Architect on Mei dropping a huge blizzard to slow the Fusion squad, and Gushui with the help of the rest of the Spark is able to score a team kill, tying up map 1, 1 point apiece. It's the final opportunity for both teams to secure map 1, the Fusion, playing from behind as they're trying to rally to the point to force overtime. But the long walk back gave the Spark just enough time to keep them at bay as they slowly creep up to 100% point control, which eventually gave the Spark the final control point and the first map point of the set. Map number 2, it's payload time. This map's action was a little bit more straightforward. The Fusion were able to secure the payload all the way to the end before time ran out. Very great defense at the end, and an easy 3 points for the Spark to try against. The Spark had to get the payload all the way to the end, but the Fusion just shut them down clean at the very end and made sure they didn't get anywhere close. Takayaki tries to leap at the very last second, but it's too little too late. We're tied at 1 map each. Map 3, we've got some assault lined up, and the Fusion are on the attack. They're able to take the first objective with little aggression from the Spark. And then on objective B, it's more of the same. The Spark just falling over like bowling pins. They have no chance to try to retake this point. As we go on to the Spark's attempt to make up for those last 2 objectives, they're on offense. And while they're able to score 1 point, getting that second point proved to be just too difficult as the Fusion zoned them off, and now the map score is 2-1 in favor of the boys in black and orange. It's time for map 4. Fusion are on match point. We're moving payloads once again. The Spark were able to escort first, but they were only able to secure the point, but not take the payload all the way to the end, just missing checkpoint number 1. Now the Fusion trying their hand. All they have to do is secure the point and make it past checkpoint number 1, and they have plenty of time and focus to clutch the checkpoint and give themselves their 3rd win of the 2021 season. All right, hopping into game 2 versus the Hunters. The Fusion are facing off, and we're going to Ilios for some good old-fashioned control. As we're reaching the end of the first round, we see Jinmu raining fire from above, but not before Alarm hits him with the sleep dart, causing Jinmu to snooze all the way to his doom. Rascal and Carpe are on cleanup duty as the Fusion takes map number 1. Moving right along to map number 2, we're headed to Havana for some payload moving. The Hunters, unable to get a single checkpoint for their payload push, make it a real low bar for the Fusion to be able to pick up that solitary checkpoint for the very quick map victory, and they're up 2-0. Map 3 finds us at Volskaya, where the Hunters are able to rally together on an incredibly close assault round to net them their first win of the set, and the count is 2-1 in favor of the Fusion. For map 4, we hightail it on the King's Row. The name of the game is Hybrid. Fusion gets the first crack at capturing the point and moving the payload, but they're only able to get it inches from the finish line as the Hunters are able to stave them off. The Hunters are actually able to meet the Fusion with the same intensity, bringing their payload right to the finish line. But a 2.48 meter difference after the conclusion of overtime means the Fusion takes this assault map and with it the 3-1 victory. This brings their record to 4-0 after week 2, making them the only undefeated team in the East standings. For week 3, the Fusion are on a small break as they've played out their May Melee matches, but the other teams in the East and West are going to get their opportunity to play out their scheduled games. The Fusion have locked in first for the May Melee, and we'll be watching closely to see which of the other teams will clinch top 4 for the East and top 6 for the West. Now, while their opponent is still to be determined, they're going to do battle with one of the remaining top seeds on May 2nd. Now that you're caught up, we're going to speak to Fusion assistant coach Chris. Hey everyone, Akinola here. I'll be here each week bringing you the Fusion content you need all season long. And making today possible, this podcast series is powered by Xfinity. Get a fast and reliable connection from Xfinity, the only network with gig speed Wi-Fi and the preferred provider of the Philadelphia Fusion. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to a new episode of The Feed, powered by Xfinity. My name is Akinola, and on today's episode of The Feed, we're talking with Chris, the assistant coach of the Philadelphia Fusion. I'm sure you guys are very excited to see what's going on. We have another inside look as to how the team is performing. If you guys are just tuning in, Last segment, we went over what happened with the Fusion in week 2 of the May Melee. Thanks very much for tuning in so far. Chris, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing good. It's wonderful to see you. It's always wonderful to talk to any sort of Fusion staff. So let's just jump right into it. You know, we've got everybody in a remote situation. How are you guys dealing with visa situation? Are there any updates that you guys are able to share with us right now?
Yes, so it's obviously it's been tough. I think ultimately what hurt us more than anything was it's almost impossible to predict like the way the virus spread across Europe, especially with different mutations and variations. But I think in the last week or so, we had the first bit of positive news in terms of getting visas for certain players. So fingers crossed, obviously, you know, you never know, but hopefully before too long, we might start to get a few of our guys kind of filtering in. And then hopefully not too much longer after that, we get the full gang.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want everybody together again. Let's talk about these last couple of wins. They're pretty big. We're the only team that's undefeated in our division, which is always great. We're starting off really strong. I know sometimes some teams don't learn a lot from wins compared to losses, but how's the team feeling after pretty dominating performance on week 2?
For sure, our confidence is high. To be honest with you, if you told me a month ago that we'd be 4-0, I wouldn't have believed you. There's so many difficulties and stuff, and like scrims didn't always go perfectly. And to be honest, even now scrims aren't going like perfectly. But I think that one thing I can say about the roster we have right now in Korea, it's extremely experienced, right? We have like, I'm sure on average close to the oldest roster if you just include those 6 players. So when it comes to playing under pressure and like in those moments, for whatever reason, there's a lot of those guys who step it up. And that's not always something that the Fusion's had, or I've had players that work like that. But I see like just the sloppy mistakes that make in scrims seem to evaporate once we get into the tournament, and then there's like a new level of cohesion that seems to happen when the pressure's on Mo's, which I suppose ends up being a much better problem than a team that does good in scrims and bad in officials. But I think that builds confidence more than anything, because no matter what happens during the week, we kind of know that, hey, when we get out there on the weekend, we can beat anybody. So no, we're certainly like over the moon with how things have gone so far.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys, I was watching the games, I was recapping them, and some of the plays that were pulled off, especially sleep on Ilios. I think that's going to be one of the highlights of this past weekend, and just a showing of how powerful the Fusion are. Cheer on the Fusion and watch every match on YouTube right on your TV. Just say Overwatch League into your Xfinity voice remote. What are your guys' plans? You know, you've got a little bit of a break right now. Not too much of a break, but a little bit of a break while we have the rest of the teams in our division play their games to see who we're playing against in the semifinals. How are you guys preparing for that upcoming match? Because obviously it's going to be a strong opponent. Nobody else can go 4-0. So how's that looking for you guys?
Yeah, so the break isn't actually going to be as long as we first expected. I think it's good that a coach, an Overwatch League team, doesn't necessarily know where his team's playing, but I think we will be playing on Sunday. And the preparation looks a lot different, because obviously when we play the games we played previously, it's a situation where we have a set map pool, and then we kind of in this situation where, okay, let's prep this map, like plan A, plan B. But now we're in a situation where we're probably going to have to prioritize maps that we want to choose, maps that we expect various opponents to choose. So we have to cover everything, and then we also have to consider like our specialty maps. You know, if we lose map 1, what do we want to pick? Maybe practice that map a little bit more. So the prep for this week definitely looks a lot different than how it looked for the previous 2 weeks.
The Fusion, I remember talking with Roston for our first episode, and his mentality was like, you know, second is not acceptable. You know, last season was a bunch of doing really well and falling short at the end of the day. Do you feel like the boys have adapted to last season's changes and are ready to actually be a dominating force this season in the Overwatch League?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that if there's one thing this starts to prove, it means that no matter how bad the circumstances and the situation we found ourselves in, that I can say this with honesty, that the players never once like gave up or like let negativity in too much. They were very much positive the whole time. There was weeks like weeks where the scrims are really horrifically, like we were really, really struggling, but never once did they stop trying. And in a lot of teams in the past, and to be honest with you, even Fusion in the past have been a victim of when things go bad, they allow that to snowball. But this season, not at all. Everyone was extremely focused from the get-go. And I think it's that characteristic which hopefully will continue to help us in the season. And then hopefully, you know, once we get playoffs, like we're not going to be able to win every map in playoffs, you know, like, or the tournaments, we're going to drop maps and stuff. But that resilience that these guys have already kind of built into themselves, hopefully will be a factor in bouncing back from those setbacks from the tournament.
This podcast is brought to you by Rothman Orthopedics, the official team physicians for the Philadelphia Fusion. Rothman Orthopedics is here to help you put pain behind you and be what you were. For more information or to make an appointment, visit rothmanortho.com. One thing that I'm curious about, and a lot of other fans are curious about, is how that scrims practice translates to the real thing. Because, you know, you mentioned before, sometimes one side goes good, the other side not so good, and you have these opportunities to play these other teams and really get some inside knowledge on how best to prepare. How important are scrims to success in the regular season?
Well, what's really interesting if you consider the concept of scrims compared to what people do in traditional sports is it's extremely accurate for the confidence that teams have, right? Because you are actively playing games against other teams and you get the results of it. So for a lot of teams, scrims becomes like the viewpoint for how good they are. That's almost every team suffers from that problem where if scrims are going well, we think we're good. If scrims are going bad, we think we're bad. And it's only maybe the more experienced players who kind of realize that there's reasons scrims can go bad. Concentration if one team's trying something, if the other team's trying something, etc. And I think that one thing we've been definitely, I've obviously repeat myself, but this season we kind of haven't let the scrims get to us. And I think the way that, especially the way that 9K coaches in general, he's so good at teaching players how to adapt to every situation. It's not just this one situation, it's everything. That's how we learn. So all of a sudden when something out of the usual happens in a tournament, it doesn't phase us anymore because we've kind of been coached in a way that deals with every situation. I know there's a lot of coaches within the league who will say, okay, on this map, on this point, we play like this. And then the second the enemy team plays a comp that's slightly different or does a strategy which is slightly different, the players just have no idea. And I think that's why 9K has been such a successful coach in the league. And it's why I think that working with him, he's been so good for us so far, is the players really can adapt to any comp, any matchup, any situation, because he's trying to teach them how to play Overwatch, not how to play plan A versus plan B or set pieces.
No other professional sport is as dependent on network technology and performance. As official Fusion Overwatch sponsors, CommScope delivers ultra-fast and reliable connectivity, allowing super smooth gameplay for the best talent around the globe. For more info, head over to commscope.com. Do you think there is a lesson that, you know, if you take the performance of last season compared to this season, what do you think is the biggest lesson that the coaching staff has walked away with to have the team grow as a whole? Like, hey, this last season I noticed we're making this type of mistakes. We weren't pushing a point adequately, or these little nitpicks. Yeah. What did you glean from last season's performance, and how did you apply it to this season to make sure you're set up for success?
So I'd say that the interesting thing is when you change head coaches, 9K had a situation where he was coming into an extremely successful team in what we did last year. So he had to find ways to continue the stuff we were doing well while adding his stuff in. And obviously there was always going to be this kind of clash of, in certain situations, we would say as Fusion, well, we did this last year and it worked well for us. And 9K would have to say, well, no, this is the way I do things. And there was that clash. But I think he's been able to handle it quite well. I think the way that we kind of play 9K's way now. Like, he's very much folded this into his team. And what he's really good at is asking, oh, in this situation, what did Fusion do last year? And he kind of asks for our advice about how to play certain comps in certain situations. And he kind of used that to build into his style. And what it's kind of ended up being is this kind of giant circle where it's 9K's identity, his philosophy, with all of the good stuff we did last year, just kind of peppered in between. And I think that's kind of why it's one of the reasons why I think we've been so successful across multiple comps this season. I think last year we had our one comp and we were genuinely unbeatable almost at that comp, right? Like most teams, if they had to play us in certain mirror matchups, couldn't handle us. But this season, we must have won games in these last 4 weeks with 3 or 4 different styles of comps. And each of them looked pretty good. So I think that's maybe the main difference from last year, I would say.
Is your current water heater giving you the cold shoulder? Upgrade to a reliable Bradford White water heater for all the hot water your family needs. You can visit bradfordwhite.com to find a professional installer near you. Just as a closing thought, do you have any words for the fans? You know, they love hearing from the staff, regardless of who it is. I know we're looking to get some players on the podcast one of these days, but if you got any messages for Philly Universe out there, the floor is yours for you to tell them what's on your mind.
Well, maybe there would have been an alternative timeline where I have to say, come on, stick with us, things are going to get better. All I can say is, thank you for sticking with it. I can't necessarily say it's been that difficult because we've won every game. It's been quite easy, but we super appreciate, especially the Philadelphia fans who wake up at, it must be ridiculous o'clock over in America to still support the team. And everyone who's been supporting Hopper and Toby, like the new players, we really appreciate it. We honestly do. And thank you. We'll do our best to keep this run going.
Absolutely. We obviously want to keep winning. Winning's a lot better than losing. Losing sucks, but we know it's bound to happen, and we know we've got some of the best support among fans in the Overwatch League. So, Chris, thank you very much for coming on. We hope to have you back on here in a future episode. Where can everybody follow you on social media if they aren't already following you?
Only on Twitter, I think I exist. It's ChristFer.OW. You get about one banger every 6 months if that's what you're interested in. I'm not too active on there, but when I do tweet, it's unbelievable. So make sure you give it a follow.
Guys, for everybody at the feed, my name is Akinola Verissimo. You've been watching. Thank you very much if you've made it to the end. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. If you're listening on any other streaming platforms, make sure you follow for updates. Everybody have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Feed.